The hydrogen paradox. So today we are going to discuss on the most significant engineering hurdle of our generation, the hydrogen paradox. Hydrogen is the fuel of the future, yet it is most aggressive element our infrastructure has ever faced. So you can we can visualize that slide where the blue lattice represent the atomic structure of our pipelines. Notice the magneta fracture on the edges, that's hydrogen embrittlement in real time. By the end of this session, you will gain three critical deliverables, and first, an understanding of metallurgical failure point at high pressure system. Second is about a data driven framework for the asset life extension, and third a blueprint for zero incident operational protocol, and which is very important. We are not just building a green economy, we are re-engineering the periodic table's relationship with steel. So if we do not master this micro scale interaction, or macro scale investment are at risk of catastrophic failure, and before they even reach maturity, it's our prime duty to also explore the delicacies of all the things that we have discussed above. So, to understand the stacks, we must look at the gap between our national policy and the physical reality of the material we use. So, coming to our target versus reality. So, these are is the main picture. On this slide, you can see the three isometric bars representing our 2030 vision versus the current risk landscape. So we can see the green segment represent our targets, a 50% non-fossil capacity, and 50 million metric ton of CO2 averted annually. However, look at the magnetic crack basis of this bar. Our current risk reality shows that while we target a 30-year asset lifespan for hydrogen infrastructure, embrittlement is threatening. It's a big threat to cut that less than 15 years. So this is a 50% reduction in ROI before we have even fully sealed all these things. So the factor here is simple. If our storages and transport system fail, and it loses integrity at the atomic level, the entire green hydrogen economy becomes a stranded asset. So we are currently bottlenecked by secure shortage. Without solving the microscopic leakage potential, we cannot hit our macroscopic climatic goal. So we need a bridge between policy and physics, which is very important. So building that bridge requires us to fuse two very different disciplines, macroeconomics and micrometallurgy. And this is all about the things that we have discussed right now. That is fusing macroeconomic with micrometallurgy. So observe the interconnected node map on the screen. So we are merging sensor data and forensic with the gradually supply chain economics. The central in the central places, we can see that the economics in the amber and the metallurgy in blue are linked by emerald green arc of data flow. So look at the table at the bottom. We are pulling component cost data at the system level and safety research from over 30,000 examples. But the most critical data comes from forensic microscopy at the atomic level. So, as an engineer, we often focus on macro system performance, but hydrogen forces us to look at the nano grain boundaries. So the operational impact is clear. You cannot price a project based on steel cost alone. You must price it based on the grain level stability of that steel under hydrogen saturation. So these intelligence landscape allow us to move from reactive repairs to predictive reliability. And this shift in focus has led to what I call on exponential safety awakening within the global scientific community. So, coming to our exponential safety awakening, the graph on the screen is a wake up call. Follow the glowing blue line starting in 1990. It stays flat for the 2 decades, but look at the inflection point after 2010. The citation for hydrogen safety have surged by over 1900%. So reaching 30,000 plus in the last decade alone. So this is not just academic interest. It's a desperate alarm being sounded on a legacy system. So, for plant superintendents or executives or managers, the job is that the old ways of handling gas are no longer industry standard. The kinetics of hydrogen are different from the natural gas. It's more mobile and more corrosive. So, these data search proves that we are entering a new era of hydrogen first engineering protocol. So if your current safety manual hasn't been updated since 2010, you are operating on obsolete intelligence. So we are moving from a linear understanding of risk to an exponential one. So a huge risk we are going to incur. So nowhere is this exponential risk is more evident than in the very material we once thought were our strongest. So the coming to the high strength steel paradox, and this slide all shows about that, a split screen microscopic view that every process engineer need to memorize. On the left in emerald green is healthy steel, on the right in magneta is a shattered structure. So this is the high strength steel paradox. The stronger the steel, faster it shatters under cyclic hydrogen exposure. Now look at the table. Low carbon steel at 400 MPa sees a 10% fatigue life reduction. But move down to cold roll steel at 1200 MPa, it suffers a staggering 80% reduction in life. The operational impact is counterintuitive. By trying to build a tougher tank with a higher grade steel, so you are actually creating a more brittle, high risk environment. So in a hydrogen economy, stronger is not better, compatible is better. So we are trading tensile strength for catastrophic fracture potential, and that is the trade we cannot afford to make in high pressure dispensers. So however, there is a metallurgical silver bullet when we look at the cryogenic threshold of a specific alloys, and our slide is on this specialist topic of the cryogenic nickel threshold. So we have found a precise metallurgical tweak that changes the game. So look at the two bars. The green bar on the left represent optimized alloy, while the red crumbling bar represent a standard 304 steel at 150 degrees centigrade. So the secret is nickel content as shown in table. A standard 304 with less than 10% nickel suffers severe decohesion. The atoms literally let go of each other. But by optimizing to a nickel content of over 12.5%, we achieve near zero degradation. So what it gives a result? Result is uh, here it is about a procurement and a capex. You might save 5% on initial purchase of saturated austenitic grade, but you will pay for it 1,000 times over in premature rupture. For cryogenic storage, 12.5% nickel is the absolute floor for safety and asset longevity. This is the difference between a system that lasts 30 years and one that fails in 5. To understand why this nickel threshold matter, we must apply the PSPP framework to degradation sequence. And our next slide is which is going to share on this process structure property analysis, which is important also to know about a hydrogen degradation, which is a sequential atomic disease. So follow the 3D block schematic on the screen. It starts at surface and moves inward. This is the PSPP framework: process, structure, property, and performance. So as shown in the table, the process is your daily process cycling. This forces H plus absorption into the structure, specifically at the grain boundaries, leading to word formation. And what is the consequences? The property of fracture toughness dropped by 40%, ultimately leading to the performance failure in a big way, a premature rupture that we can say. So, the operational impact is that by the time you see a crack, the disease has already won. We must monitor the process of pressure cycling to predict the performance of the asset. This slide is the roadmap for the forensic analysis. We do not look for the break, we look for the condition. We are looking for the rules that lead to the word formation. So knowing how the material fall allow us to map these vulnerabilities against the actual cost of hydrogen station. And cost vulnerable matrix is so important that we have to share in this slide. So this is your capital allocation map, and we have broken down a standard hydrogen station into four components. Notice the large red diamond, the compressor. It represents the 49% of your station cost and as a critical vulnerability level because of its high frequency moving parts and pressure fatigue. Next is storage at 15%, then chiller at 14%, and the dispenser at 13%. So what it gives the consequences? Is it clear for the project managers? You must over engineer the compressor. It is the heart of the system and the most likely point of failure. If the compressor goes down due to hydrogen induced fatigue, half of your investment is offline. While dispensers have lower vulnerability because the exposure is surface level, the compressor faces a dynamic multi-axial stress that accelerates the embrittlement also. So focus your maintenance budget where the cost and vulnerability intersect. If we ignore this intersection, the results are not just financial, they are catastrophic, as we saw in someone's case study, which we are going to show in the next slide without taking the name of the place or organization. So, coming to our slide, having a root cause explanation. So as you can see that this is the human cost of misunderstanding hydrogen kinetics. In this place explosion, a multi-system facility was lost because of minor permeability misunderstanding. So follow the 5 ways staircase on the left. Why the explosion? Oxygen and hydrogen mix in the tank. Why did they mix? Membranes degradation. Why the degradation? Because the team ignored the dynamic operating range. So why was it ignored? Because they misunderstood gas permeability. The root cause was a lack of specific hydrogen material protocol, and the operational impact is a 50 million US dollar loss and a total loss of public trust. So this was not a random accident, it was a predictable failure of material science. Hydrogen will find every weakness in your membranes and every flaw in your protocol. The reason hydrogen is so unforgiving is revealed when we compare its flammability limit to traditional fuel. And coming to the uh, understanding with a simplified phase diagram, uh, about the flammability minefield. So look at the horizontal gradient on the slide. The green, that is the safe zone, is the incredibly narrow comparison compared to the massive red danger zone. So this is the flammability minefield. If you look at the table, gasoline has an upper explosive limit of 7.6%, methane is 15%, but what about hydrogen? Hydrogen's upper limit is 75%. So it stays explosive even at incredibly high concentration. Furthermore, its minimum ignition energy is only 0.011 millijoule. That's nearly 80 times more sensitive than gasoline. So, what is the consequences? That traditional venting strategies for methane will fail with hydrogen because it requires so little energy to ignite and has such a wide explosive range. A teeny static spark that would not touch the gasoline will turn a hydrogen leak into a blowtorch. Safety is not about preventing the big leak, it's about meaning the microenvironment. So, to manage that environment, we have developed a correlation matrix to identify the ultimate catalyst for the failure. So coming to our next slide, which is on about a correlation matrix, the web of influence. So this constellation plot shows the factor leading to catastrophic failure. Notice the thickest red arc, that is the pressure cycling. It has a correlation uh, coefficient of R is equal to 0.94 as it is shown in the slide very clearly. So that is an extremely strong relationship. Conversely, tensile strength has a strong inverse correlation R is equal to 0.88, meaning as strength goes up, the safety margin goes down. So hydrogen concentration is also a strong driver at R is equal to 0.82. Interestingly, ambient temperature is a weak factor at only 0.31. So the operational takeaway is that your biggest enemy is not the weather or even the pressure itself. It's the change in pressure. It is a change in pressure. So frequent start stop cycle are what drive the hydrogen into the grain boundaries. So if you want to extend asset life, you must optimize your fuel protocols, or we can say such feeding protocols to minimize this rapid pressure swing. So stability is the key to longevity. So based on these correlation, we can now forecast the reliability of different material over a 20-year horizon. And coming to our next slide, which is about predicting the forecast about the reliability horizon. So we can say that this graph which shows the integrity percent over a 20-year period, the red line represents the standard steel. Notice how it plummeted to 12% integrity, a critical risk zone by year 20. So now look at the green curve for the advanced material, fiber reinforced polymer, and high nickel austenites stay well within the optimal or safe zone. So high nickel austenites maintain 81% integrity after 2 decades. Fiber reinforced polymers are even better at 94%. The so what is about the reliability horizon. So if you build with standard steel, you are scheduling a disaster for your successor in 15 years. By upgrading to advanced polymers and high nickel alloys today, you extend asset viability by the decades. This is how we move from a disposable infrastructure to a sustainable one. But material are only half the battle. We also need multi-layered strategic intervention. So our next slide, which is about the strategic intervention, the mitigation matrix. And on this slide, you see a 3D layered sensor architecture. And redundancy is not optimal. We have three layer of intervention. Layer 1, PPB leak sensors for unseen accumulation. These provide a high efficacy early warning. Layer 2 is about a organization to help human detection, though this has medium efficacy due to fuel cell sensitivity. And layer 3, which is about automated or automated venting to prevent overpressure. So the result is here is that you cannot really depend on a really one safety system. You need a sensor venting architecture where the PPB sensor trigger the automated venting before a human even knows there is a problem. So in a high pressure hydrogen environment, the time between a minor leak and a major event is measured in millisecond. So these automated layer buy you the time that manual intervention cannot. Of course, these layers come with a price tag, but we must weigh that against the cost of a total loss. So, our next slide, which is about the economic impact and that is the about a cost resilience. So, this bar chart puts the finances into a perspective. Upgrading to high nickel steel at 15% to your capex. Installing a PPB sensor network at 3%. But a single station explosion result in a 50 million US dollar loss, a catastrophic wipeout. The ROI classification for these upgrades is protective. We are spending 18% more upfront to protect 100% of the asset and 1000% of the brand's reputation. So for the CFO in the room, this is not an expense, it is an insurance policy. The financial blast radius of a hydrogen incident extends far beyond the physical site. It affects insurance premium, stock prices, and regulatory standing. The cost of resilience is a fraction of the cost of failure. So this leads us to our final blueprint for the National Green Hydrogen Mission. So final blueprint, which is about the advancing the national mission. So our final blueprint is built on three strategic pillar. So pillar one is material. We must mandate fiber reinforced polymers and nickel content about 12.5% to ensure asset longevity. Pillar 2 is about operations. We need subcooled fuel protocols to prevent leak inducing thermal stress. The pillar 3 is about the data. Continuous PPB monitoring is the only way to achieve zero explosion. Net zero is not just a climate goal, it's a metallurgical and operational challenge also. So by following this blueprint aligned with the PESO standard shown in the compass, we ensure that India's national green hydrogen mission is not just ambitious, it's invincible also. So let's build it right, build it safe, and build it once.